You're here today because of your new book for Wonder Woman. What was it like writing in someone else's world? Because you're so good at creating your own worlds.
I actually have two books coming out, Wonder Woman, Warbringer, and The Language of Thorns, which is a collection of fairy tales. And there was sort of a through line through them, which is, I think, like the challenge is that you're creating this new thing that's also in conversation with everything that's come before it, but at the same time you're putting your own spin on it. So in a way, I think every time we write, we're doing that anyway. It's just a little more explicit when we're dealing with an iconic character like Diana. It was a great joy to write her. Like, she is really unique among superheroes in that I think what defines her is not just how strong she is, but how kind she is. And especially coming off of Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, where I was writing these morally gray characters, it was a real change to write somebody like Diana, and I loved it. But I also loved playing in the world. I loved writing about the Amazons and Themyscira. I loved even thinking about like the food they ate, the religions they held dear, you know, the way that the landscape would look to them. It was all part of feeling like I was part of something so much bigger than me. Getting to write her in New York and Greece was really thrilling too. Like I have written very little in our world, and so it was fun but also challenging. Like there was this one point where I was like, I need there to be a waterfall in this place, and there's no waterfall in this place. I'm like creating waterfall in place.
What was it like then watching the movie for Wonder Woman? Did you see a lot of differences, similarities? Was it weird for you?
It was definitely weird but also thrilling. There are huge differences. My story is set in our modern world, and it's Diana at 17 before she's had any contact with the world of man. So think of it as a completely alternate universe. But at the same time, there were some interesting through lines, like the armory, some of the relationships with the Amazons. There's even a joke that made it into the movie that's a joke I made too, that I suspect has been made multiple times in the Wonder Woman universe. So that was kind of neat.
But you didn't know, like you didn't tell them the joke, it just happened?
It just happened, and I knew they would tell me nothing about the movie going in. So when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh my gosh, it's World War I. Like this doesn't fit into my timeline at all. And then I was like, it doesn't matter. Like that's the thing about these characters is you're allowed to create and recreate without worrying too much about which version of canon you're depicting.
What's your favorite thing about her character?
One of the things I love writing the most was her first exposure to our world, because there are things that we take for granted, and I mean not positive things but negative things as well, that Diana sort of looks at us and is like, what? Like, why would you, huh? And there's a scene on a subway with a bunch of like investment banking pros that I really had a lot of fun writing, because she doesn't take for granted the way we've been conditioned to behave as women. So that was a really fun thing to write. And in general, I just like writing her goodness. Like I think we have this idea that good characters or kind characters are not interesting, and I think that's a myth. I think they can be really interesting because they still have vulnerabilities, they still get plenty of things wrong, they still deal with their own ideas about heroism, and they have their own selfishness and their own fears, but they're just trying a lot harder to make the right choice. Diana is all about remembering that, you know, none of us is free until all of us are free.
So what can you tell us about The Language of Thorns?
Okay, so The Language of Thorns is a collection of original fairy tales. Some of them are very clearly inspired by stories we know, like Hansel and Gretel or Beauty and the Beast. And some are a little bit, you have to dig a little bit deeper. They're set in the world of the Grisha, but you don't have to have ever read a Grisha book before to read them. They're the stories that the characters in my books would have heard growing up and that they were raised on, and they're from all over the Grisha world. And they're beautifully illustrated. Every page has a new illustration, and they build, so it's almost like a flip book. They did such an incredible job on this book. I feel very lucky. Sarah Kippen is the artist on the illustrations.
Is there anything else you're working on right now we can look forward to?
Yeah, I'm currently working on Ninth House, which is my new book. It's actually written for adults. It's my first foray outside of young adults, and it's a story set among the secret societies at Yale. It's a fantasy full of dark magic and murder. So I'm working on that, and then I'm going to switch gears and be working on a new project soon that I can't talk about just yet, but it does have to do with the Grishaverse.
Is it for a YA?
Yes.
Oh, we're excited.
I'm excited too.